I thought I might start, if I could, Premier. One of the many roles you play is that of Tourism Minister. And obviously in the time you've been here, you've seen tourism develop to be such an important part of the economy here. I'm just curious as to what are the changes you've seen over time and what have been the types of tourists you've been able to attract, what have been the changes in the service offering, and where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, and it's, I think, really been reflective of the transformation that is Tasmania today. And we've always had a very proud and successful tourism sector, but in recent years we've been able to embrace what's now more commonly known as the visitor economy, and that captures so much of what's special about Tasmania, not just our tourism and hospitality sectors, but the quality of our environment, the high grade of our products, the extraordinary experiences that we offer in a state that has the cleanest air in the world and some of the most pristine areas of natural wilderness you'll ever enjoy. And there's been a beautiful coming together of each of those things to produce what is now known as Tasmania. But equally, it needed to be kick-started and to have a government prepared to invest and to back a sector that many economists and other cynics might say isn't necessarily always a sustainable investment and can be quite cyclical. But our tourism growth has been very strong and sustained over the last 5 years. It has continued to outstrip national pace. International tourists have increased by 21% and they're spending by 21% over the last year alone, and we are far ahead of every other jurisdiction now, well and truly Australia's leading tourism destination. So it's required an investment in infrastructure, into the marketing and the work that Tourism Tasmania does, into some key assets. There's going to be a massive investment at Cradle Mountain, for example, investing into our partnerships with airlines and also to build 2 new spirits that will bring more visitors to our state and to provide more reasons for visitors to come here and for their experience to be different. And there are a lot more independent travellers, a lot more international tourists, and a lot more growth, and the market's responding with investment in hotels and other infrastructure as well. So it has been a great investment. It does tie in with our brand and how we're positioned as a state, and we've certainly got big plans to continue that growth because it's been great not only for Tasmania's economy but I think also for our state's development to be a place that's now a lot more culturally confident than we've ever been.
Wonderful. Well, I've certainly enjoyed coming down here like so many others. Premier, I mean, in terms of population growth, that's been so important for Australia. Part of the prosperity we talked about of 27 years of unmitigated growth has come from population growth, amongst other things. It's been an important factor here in Tasmania. What do you see as some of the advantages, if you like, of population growth, but also some of the challenges that your government is facing into?
Yeah, and it is important, and pleasingly our population growth has been at around its highest rate for a decade or so, and to be fair, we've come off a very low base, and for some years we had net migration loss, sadly, from our state. So we've turned that around, and as you say, a bit over 1% growth in the last financial year, 526,633 Tasmanians, I think, when I last looked. We're certainly growing our population at a sustainable rate, one which is manageable, but one which is so important for our state's economic and social prosperity. So we have developed a population growth strategy. It does deal with ways to bring more people to our state, particularly those with skills that can fill shortages in key sectors of our economy. That can be dispersed into regional Tasmania, so we don't have the same sorts of concentration spikes that other places are experiencing, and so that we can deal with what was once described as a demographic time bomb for our state, and that would have massive economic ramifications as well as social implications for our state. So we're offering more people a good reason to come to our state. We're building the infrastructure that they need to enjoy the quality of life that Tasmanians do, and we will work very closely with the Commonwealth in seeing what they might do to assist our population growth and to achieve those objectives without ever wanting to deny Tasmanians the first opportunity for that job or to do our bit by our citizens, our state's economic and social prosperity, and diversification of our community does depend, I believe, strongly on good sustainable population growth.
Yeah, we talked about Japan and how the fact that Japan is now growing for the first time in several decades, and that has not been a country that has promoted population growth or immigration. So very, very helpful to Australia. Jason.
Hello, Jason Kambowski from Westpac's Public Sector Team. Premier, we've seen that much of Australia is in drought at the moment, and much of the weather that was experienced in Sydney last night was due to dust storms because of the drought. Here in Tasmania, you're blessed with a disproportionate amount of fresh water, which gives you a natural advantage in the agricultural space. What else do you think can be done to leverage that natural advantage that exists here, across all types of agriculture?
Yeah, and it's a national crisis and not one which is totally unfamiliar to Tasmania. It wasn't that many years ago that parts of our state were declared drought affected. A national crisis that's now enveloping so much of eastern Australia is similarly being affected or affecting communities here, and the east coast of Tasmania is going through a very difficult drought. So notwithstanding the paradox that is that we have the smallest landmass of any state, but 13% of the nation's rainfall, and we do capture a lot of it, and a lot of it goes through those turbines that power our hydro systems. We're doing a lot more to drought-proof Tasmania and have what is regarded as national leading infrastructure investments by state, federal and private sector farmer investors in irrigation schemes across the state. And for anyone who's driven up through the Midlands, sorry for the delays and our roadworks. But it gives you an opportunity to slow down and see the transformation that's occurred in the Midlands that only a few years ago was suffering drought, and other states and jurisdictions are now looking at that expertise that sits within Irrigation Tas and our communities to apply similar models and assist in national drought recovery.
Great, thank you. We've got a question over here.
Premier, Dean Yates from Ernst & Young.
No,
Great story, and it's a great economic narrative, which I don't Tasmania's been able to tell for quite a while. Can you comment a little bit on the north-south divide, which we still sort of sense and feel when we visit here, and to what extent the state of the state differs depending on where you live in the state, and how your government goes about making sure that it's inclusive growth for the whole of the state?
I assume you're talking about economic, not football.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. We won't touch football today.
That's a lot easier. Look, we identified early in our first term of government a two-speed economy happening, strong pockets of growth across regional Tasmania, but the north was not enjoying the same rate of growth, certainly not as much as it is now, but we still need to do what we can to strengthen the resilience of the northern economy. And we took some early action to provide investments, again collaborating with local government, more capital programs in the north of the state, a great partnership with the University of Tasmania to transform the city and the northern region into a centre of learning excellence, and to partner with the university in a major infrastructure upgrade, and to bring the university into the city will transform that region, and also to tap into some areas in our visitor economy, for example, where there's opportunity and unique competitive advantage for the north, and what we've done in mountain biking in the north and northeast, led by a very keen and enthusiastic biking sector, but also local government is helping to transform parts of the northeast and the north as well. So we've taken some pretty deliberate interventionist action to encourage, through our non-government partners, more investment into the north, and we're now starting to see more of an uptake in the northern economy, which is great.
So, Premier, you talked about renewables and about the energy sector, and we know firsthand a lot of the work you're doing. We're the largest renewable financier in the country. What do you see as being some of the main areas of focus here going forward? I mean, there are so many different types of technology being developed here. You talk about disruption. I mean, that is really the classic area where we need a lot of disruption and we need that technology. What's the focus of your government going forward, building on the great work you've done so far?
Yeah, well, in the energy space, the stars have aligned, and Tasmania's hydro base is well established and historic, and now proving to be part of what will be a national energy mix that's increasingly in demand and of value to our state, and part of what will be a national infrastructure program. We're confident we'll continue with the same level of interest from the Commonwealth Government and indeed other jurisdictions that we're told are going to go through the same sorts of problems they did last summer with reliability issues in their networks that we can help address. So there's a lot of opportunity for Tasmania, and this is literally a once in a generation, once in a century opportunity possibly for our state again to match what was that initial hydro investment, and it does involve the state being quite actively involved in the development of very modern, contemporary energy systems, quite revolutionary, quite unique to Australia as a state that will be 100% renewable and able to export excess energy into the national market and address that national issue, all the while keeping our energy secure while giving us a great revenue stream. So I don't think the significance of that can be understated, and while we're rarely, if ever, these days called mendicant, when the rest of Australia looks at what we can offer, other than being the best place in the country to visit, our role in the national electricity grid will be quite profound over the coming years.
Other questions here? I'll keep asking questions, Premier. You talked earlier on about partnerships, and you've referenced it a couple of times. Partnerships perhaps with business, partnerships with academia. And I look at the fast-changing world we're in. To my mind, what we really need is that ability to learn across and collaborate with so many different thinkers. We need those problem-solving, the critical thinking skills, the ability to challenge. What does it feel like for your government sometimes having that challenge, if you like, coming through? And what are you doing? Because it certainly is top of mind for us in our company, a 201-year-old company, trying to stay relevant in a fast-changing world. How do we change the culture of our organisation to be able to take on board all of the if you like, changes that we in different ways of working that we should do to further our organisation? How do you think about that for government and bringing in that infusion of great ideas and just actually getting some of these things done and taken on board?
I think it's so important, and it's an opportunity in a small state such as ours where we're well connected and I know each other pretty well. We're able to do that more swiftly and nimbly and often more creatively than perhaps in other places. And I think some of our most significant impacts and policy implementations and outcomes have come from unconventional partnerships between governments of all levels, other key partners, and I've referred to our university, for example. The non-government community sector is another great example where we have partners who are able to match our objectives, to supplement our policies and value add to them. And it's the point I alluded to where it is now the case in Tasmania that we have our Chamber of Commerce and Industry partnering with government and our community sector on regional jobs programs. That is a powerful example of that sort of collaboration. And the point I was making is that when you get community sector leaders say to you that they want to be part of Tasmania's economic transformation and to develop an inclusive growth strategy, that's a very powerful message, but it's also a rare opportunity for us at this prosperous time. And I think that's the next step of what we need to do. We've spoken as a government and I'm sure as a community about the brighter future we want Tasmanians to enjoy. Well, it's now the reality. So the next step is for us to be a little further thinking and to look across that horizon and to make that our mission. We've shown we can be the best and we can deliver a strong economy for our state and compete. Now we want every Tasmanian to feel what that means and to be part of that.
Where do you think, to that end, some of the more vulnerable parts of your community, where they lie, and where are some of the major interventions that they need actually to feel like they're part of it? I mean, one of the things that wasn't mentioned in that speech is part of the reason so many people, and CEDA's researchers uncovered this, are feeling like they're missing out, is that, you know, you've had that 1.9% wage income growth for like decades now, except once we got to 2012, it pretty much flattened out. That's where people are feeling like they're not sharing in that, that upside. Have you got any reflections on where you're seeing that play through and the sort of feedback you're getting from your constituents here in Tasmania, and what needs to be done about that?
And it's probably a product of the beauty of our state that we have a very regionalised community, and socially disconnected or dislocated communities that people choose to live in can present massive challenges for government and the non-government sector to bridge those gaps and to engage people in their education, to provide them with efficient transport networks to get to a hospital or, as importantly, more importantly, to a job or into the training that they need to get that job. So there's some physical constraints that do present as challenges for us, and a large part of the infrastructure investments I spoke about are into that social infrastructure that can make Tasmania a more attractive place for people to come and live in, but also for those communities that want to be close to a good school, to a university that now has expanded its campus presence into the north and the northwest coast. And you know, what many thought might never be possible, nor the university might have thought would ever be a good move, a business move for them, but shows the impact of that expansion into regional Tasmania is possible and worth supporting, as my government does. So that infrastructure program that we're laying out is about that connectivity that will bring our communities closer to the services they need and to allow them to be engaged and included in our state's economic growth.
Wonderful. We have a question up here, Premier.
Premier Lou Clark, Bell Bay Aluminium. I just wondered if you wanted to comment on the local government review that's been announced today, and the fact, or I understand the fact that council amalgamation is not included as part of that 2-year review process.
So the Local Government Act review is a review into the Act, and that includes a whole lot of machinery that sits across local government and is designed to work out how we can have a better legislative arrangement that serves their needs and the needs of ratepayers. And there are a lot of details and areas where that work can be done that improve the operations of councils. That doesn't mean that we won't and shouldn't continue to talk with local government about reforms in their space, about other things they can do to better service their communities and to collaborate and work in sync with state government, to encourage councils to merge or amalgamate as we have done, and a lot of work has been done to involuntarily require councils to be part of that conversation, and that work doesn't stop.
And Premier, we have a question over here. Last question.
Hi, Premier.
Hi, Rob.
Robert Mallett, Tasmanian Small Business Council. Disruption